I propose a toast to Tim Lewis. He would love to be here. He was a guy all of us know well and loved getting together with. And he was a great party guy, and he would enjoy this party, so we can enjoy it for him. To Tim Lewis.
Here, here.
Yeah, Tim.
And I'd also like to throw out a big thank you to Connie and her daughter, and to one other gal, Connie especially, because Tim was able to live at home in a way that was terrific. And we all know that. We all got to see Tim. I think it was a year ago, Holly and I were talking about what are we going to do next winter, because it felt like it was a tough winter last year for Tim, and we had a loose group of friends who would see him and help out. Holly, I just mentioned that last year we talked about how are we going to do it for Tim, next winter. I think it was about a year ago now that we were talking about it. And several times, Holly and I and Paul and some others have gotten together and said, let's take different nights or get together with Tim. Typically, we took him out on Wednesday nights for dinner. We did that for years. And it was a blast, like that photograph. The one at the front with Tim in that big coat. I think that was his 75th birthday. He came over. We had a party for him, and all of you know he spent quite a bit of time in New York City. And that coat came from Mark Ringlever. Paul told me, I was trying to figure out who gave it. We presented it to him at his 75th birthday. It was at my house, and but I couldn't remember where the coat came from. And then Paul said it was Mark Ringlever, because he had this beautiful coat that his brother, who's a lobbyist, and those people get all kinds of, they're kind of fashionable people. And anyway, Mark had this coat, and he said to me, I can't wear this around Empire. Who could? And I said, Tim Lewis could. So we had this birthday party and presented Tim. You can see in that photograph, he's pretty happy about that coat.
Sure was.
But Tim was a terrific friend. I loved collaborating with him on the Asparagus Festival posters, which I put together just for this, the 12 first posters, and I have one. I printed enough, I think, for everybody here to take one. And we'll probably sell those. After I talk, I'll put them out on the table there. He and I would work on those every year. And now that he's gone, I'm a little worried about who I'm going to work with on it, because the logical person is Paul. And of course, Paul has a reputation, at least with me. I think I've been drunk 3 times in my life, and 2 of them have been Paul Skinner. So I'm really worried about working on the poster with him.
It was probably a third time too, but you don't remember.
That's it. I could at least stumble home without driving in the car. But he was so prolific and fun. One of the early things I loved about Tim was I would go for a run. I'd end up on the beach coming back, and half a mile away I could spot this tall, thin figure coming down the beach when he could walk well, because he'd have a pocket full of stones. Those of you who know his house, he's got all these great rocks. Well, I'd come running back and I'd see Tim down the beach, and we'd stop and chat. He'd always have a pocket full of stones. So that was a lot of fun. It was great fun today putting these paintings up, because as you know, you go over to his place And he has so many paintings and so many stories. I was telling a few people here tonight, I have scans. He did a 20-page pamphlet on the Vietnam War. It was like a small book, and it was realistic illustrations. I'm sorry I didn't get it printed out, because nobody else that I know of has seen it. He and I were sitting talking at his place one time, and he pulled it out, and I said, Tim, that's totally different than anything I've ever seen you do, because it was all realistic stuff. It was a political statement against the war, and it was partially racial, too, about how many blacks were involved in the war, and it was Tim's support of black participation. So at some point, I'll get that, and I'll get it to Scott. Maybe we can print some out or something. But it was quite a different piece. It was fun putting some of these up. This is one that Tim and I bartered for recently, and I kept reading all kinds of things into it. And Tim said, no, I just put it, I said, Tim, that's the story of my life. I'm on the run. And all these things are going wild. I'm running this baby, and there's so much going on. But it's fun talking to people tonight, because everybody has a favorite Tim painting and story and stuff. And I have a few notes. I want to make sure I've covered some of the things. Last summer we had a birthday party for Tim. I think it was about, what was his birthday? It was...
He couldn't count, he'd forgotten. You remember?
It was July or August. Anyway, he had said his 80th birthday was coming up. So I said, okay, let's have a party. It was going to be at my house. Well, Maggie by the way, Maggie would love to be here, but she's in Boston with her grandkids, and she loved Tim and vice versa. Anyway, Maggie picked him up, and when she brought him over to the house, Tim came walking up and he said, Jack, I'm not sure this is my 80th. I said, well, when were you born? He said, 1927. I say this, and I said, I think this is your 79th birthday. So, one of my favorite stories that Tim told was when he was in Sunday school. So he was like 6 years old or 7. And the Sunday school teacher, there was a ring of kids around, and Tim was one of the last ones in the circle. But the Sunday school teacher started the kids saying what they liked best. Well, it's Sunday school, so every kid, there were 8 kids in a row who said they loved Jesus. And the Sunday school teacher got to Tim and said, Tim, what do you love? Tim said, I love tapioca pudding. And so, there were a couple times when Maggie and I would go over with tapioca pudding to Tim's. Tim and I were sitting together when Jerry arrived one day. We'd never met before. Jerry was
just come to town.
And Tim and I are sitting there. We hear a knock on the door, and there's this strange person, and he introduces himself. This is Jerry, and so Tim and I are telling Jerry about Empire, and I just happened to say a truism about Empire, that you have to pass the insanity test before you can move to Empire. And I said, see, Tim and I, we passed. We're in good shape here. So I'll put the posters out.